We're waiting for Facebook. Instagram, you're already here. All right, here we are. Weekly Spark, October 20th, how to set boundaries when you are your own boss. This has come up with my clients a lot lately, so I wanted to address it for all of you in case you are also experiencing this. Do you feel like you're always on the clock? Or maybe you feel that guilty feeling like you should be checking your inbox. You should be responding to messages or responding to your clients or doing more, especially if you're an entrepreneur and business owner. Or maybe, as someone submitted on Instagram yesterday, you're anticipating the holidays and your family and your friends and the commitments and the obligations and trying to plan how to make everyone happy, including hopefully yourself. Well, I have been there. I have been there when you feel the obligation, when you feel like you don't have boundaries, or maybe you feel like you've swung that pendulum in the far other direction and you have too many boundaries and then have lost some of the benefits of, for instance, intimate connection. And today I'm going to share a 3-step process, super simple, for how to set boundaries, of course, in a way that is in alignment with you and your values and that feels really good and ultimately is, believe it or not, a win-win-win for everyone involved. In other words, 3 steps to truly becoming your own boss. A lot of my clients have transitioned from having a boss to being their own boss. And one of the components of that transition that often I find gets missed or forgotten is how do you manage your own time, your own tasks, your own deadlines when no one else really cares about them. No one else is really worried about what you're doing because you're your own business. As it's built intentionally, no one else is relying on you. You are the only one relying on you. So how do we set boundaries with your time, with family and business, especially now that a lot of us are at home, and so those 2 things are interwoven more than ever, and again in a way that's a win-win-win for everyone. All right. So I want to start with a very short example of what is possible when we are able to set these boundaries. And this is from just yesterday. I had a call with a client, and this was like the last straw to why I decided to talk about this today. Because like I said, it's come up a lot with my clients of how to set boundaries and specifically how to be our own boss. Yesterday, my client shared that he felt like he was always on the clock. And specifically, this is after the launch of his business website went live. And so there was this thought in his mind that he has to be in front of his computer at all times, essentially, to ensure that if someone reaches out via his website, that's now live 24/7 across all time zones, also, that he has to respond in a timely manner, specifically to be professional. And what we did was that last piece is so important, and that's what I'm going to walk you through today. He knew that he wanted to be professional. And once we got to that value and that intention, we were able to walk backwards and say, okay, is being on the clock at all times the only way or even the way to be professional and show up for his clients how he wanted to? So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to walk you through how to set boundaries by digging under what the intention is and what the value is that's trying to be addressed, either in setting boundaries or in not setting boundaries. It can go both ways, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a moment. All right, so 3 steps, but there is a step 0. The step 0 is to admit that whatever you're doing currently is not working. Whatever is happening right now, for instance, my client who felt like he was always on the clock, that stress and that pressure to always be on the clock, the first step was to say, this isn't working. This isn't how I want to run my business. This isn't how I want to show up for my friends and family. This isn't how I want to take care of myself by not having boundaries or by having boundaries that weren't set from my place of alignment. So for a moment, just a short moment, feel the stress, feel the pressure, feel the misalignment or the dissonance that exists there, and then go on to step 1. Step 1 is to get clear on what you're trying to accomplish here. So again, like I brought up with that example of my client, he was trying to be professional. And that's why he felt like he was always on the clock, because he wanted to, professionalism was tied really closely with the sense of responding quickly. and being there to respond. And once we got to professionalism, we could unpack that and say, okay, what actually is professionalism? In responding to these clients, what do you want to demonstrate? That you're a good business owner, right? That you're there for them. Are there other ways that we can demonstrate that without always being on the clock, because that was leading to stress and burnout? So for yourself, dig into what are you trying to accomplish, again, either by setting a boundary or by not setting a boundary. So let's give another example that's setting a boundary. If you have set a boundary where you will not reply to family messages or text messages throughout your workday, right? If that's using this personal example, for like 9 to 5 or whenever you work. If you're not going to respond to family and friend messages during that time, why? Why is that the case? You've set up that boundary, and then ask yourself, especially if that step 0 happened, that you know it's not working for you, why? Why did you set up that boundary? So for me, again, this is a personal example, not responding to friends and family during my workday originally, when it was a very hard boundary, was set up because I wanted to be able to be fully present with my business and not get distracted. I didn't want to get pulled into something else that had no relation to what I was currently doing. Once I got to that level, and once you get to your level of why you have or have not set up a boundary that isn't working, then I could see I don't want to get distracted if that's the main purpose, but I can still check messages in a different boundaried way. So for instance, saying, okay, I'm going to give myself a 5-minute break. This is what I often do now. Give myself a 5-minute break, check family friend messages, look through the group chat intentionally, look through the Snapchat intentionally, as a way to actually distract myself from business for a moment, to like go into that junk flow mindset and de-stress and take a step back and then come back to my business. But I knew the why of the original boundary. I still wanted that intention to not get distracted from work. So I set a new boundary that says I can check messages, friends and family throughout the day if I want to, within a boundary. So I'll give myself 5 minutes, or I'll give myself, this lunch break, and I'll check my friend and family messages. So again, it's this first step is getting under the why. Whether you've set a boundary, such as the messaging example that I just gave, or whether you haven't set a boundary, such as my client example, feeling like they're always on the clock, get at the why that's under that. So then we can go on to step 2 and think about how can you do this in a different way. So I gave the example of my messaging. I can do that in a different way. I can still not get distracted in a different way by setting a different boundary, 5 minutes, lunch break, whatever it is, to check messages and still have my full focus on my business for the rest of the day. The client example that I gave earlier, the why, that underlying reason for no boundary, was professionalism. So we brainstormed a lot of different ways that he could still be professional, such as outlining his business hours really concretely and directly on his website, on Google, on all the areas where clients might be reaching out. And this is actually a great sign of professionalism, because it's really clear. It shows that he is in business. It shows when he's off the clock. It gives his clients who are reaching out the expectation of when they will and will not hear from him. Another example is my own contract with my clients. I tell them in the contract that I will respond to client messages if they have a package that includes client messages within 48 hours. And so I have set this from the very start, from day one, that I will get back to you within 48 hours. That also sets an expectation for myself. How fast do I need to, because I've set that expectation, get back to clients? That also gives the ground for my clients to have an expectation of, if they haven't heard back from me, to check that 48-hour window. If it goes beyond 48-hour window, they have all the right to bring it up and say, hey, haven't heard from you in 48 hours. That rarely, if ever, happens. But that sets the expectation from both sides. So your personal expectation and your client's expectation. Again, a win-win-win. Another example that I wanted to bring in here on this step 2 of brainstorm other ideas is, let's say, for instance, it's like digging even deeper. The client example of wanting to be professional with a business. Let's actually go one layer below that or beyond that. Maybe even more so, it's that my client wants a successful business, and a successful business is tied to professionalism. And maybe below that layer, wanting a successful business because he wants independence or freedom, or wants to be his own boss long term, right? Not just for 1 month and then have to go find another job. So digging even deeper under those layers also gives you the opportunity to brainstorm those layers. So if, for instance, it's not only professionalism, it's a successful business. Not only that, it's a step lower, which is to have income, consistent income, so he can be his own boss for a long, sustainable time. Once you get to that level, holy cats, that level, you can then brainstorm, how can I have a successful business sustainably, make money, be my own boss for a long time? For sure, that doesn't mean sitting in front of your business or your computer, wherever your business is, every hour, every single hour of the day, every single day of the week. That, at least from what I've witnessed, is not sustainable over time. And so what is a way to do that? Maybe it's adaptability. Maybe it's hiring a team. Maybe it's already thinking about the next step of your business if you know you're going to be in business long term. So you can see when we dig under those layers in step 1 of finding the why, and then step 2, brainstorming how that can happen, it broadens our perspective and our possibility for how to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish with or without boundaries in the first place. Step 3, enter and experiment. So take something from that second step of how you can accomplish the why that you found in your first step, how you can accomplish it, and try it on for size. So one thing I love to do in my time management workshop is to invite clients and participants of this workshop, because this is so common, to try on the experiment of not checking your email for a full day. This is something, or let's like baby step even more, for an hour, right? Like, let's not have email notifications on for 1 hour, or maybe wait until like noon or 11 a.m. to check emails instead of it being the first thing of the day. And why I'm bringing this up in step 3 is because this brings up a lot of anxiety and nerves for a lot of individuals that I've had in my time management workshop. And so I imagine for you as well. If it brings up nerves, come back to that idea of being in an experiment. So choose a time, choose a day, choose a week, choose a confined space to try this on and see what happens. What I encourage for my participants of the time management workshop, and what I will encourage for you right now, is to take those beliefs, and you don't necessarily have to combat them right away. So for instance, if you think that you will lose clients by not checking emails until noon every day, right? If you don't check them right away in the morning, you're going to lose clients because people will be unsatisfied. Give yourself a safe, confined space, for instance, 1 day, to try on that experiment of not checking emails and just see what happens. If you lose 10 clients, revisit, see if that was truly the reason. It's correlation, not causation. So see if that truly was the reason or something else happened. But then also you have a data point to use. And in my experience, not checking emails first thing in the morning does not do any detriment to your business. In fact, may foster business growth because you're focused right away in the morning. So try on something for size. Take that limiting belief, take that perspective that you have adopted thus far, and just challenge it for a short period of time. Gather some data, see if it's true. Most likely, what you've assumed to be true isn't necessarily true. Another thing to bring in mind here with this experiment is to think of jujitsu. So to go with these limiting beliefs rather than fight against it. A good example with my coach yesterday, we were exploring a certain area of my life, and I felt so much resistance to what we were exploring. My coach was offering all these different ways we could interact with what we were exploring in my life. We could try on this new perspective. We could try something, and I was so against it. There was part of me that for whatever reason was very defensive in that moment. And for jujitsu, for this idea of, if that's coming up with you in boundary setting, then for sure don't take that approach that's so resistant for you. Sometimes it's fun to lean into that and try it on for size, but if you're feeling so much resistance, it's not going to be a fun ride. Find a place where you don't feel as much resistance, just like that idea of an experiment, and just try it on in a small way, in a way that feels approachable, probably uncomfortable because it's new, but still approachable, and try that on, rather than going toward the thing that feels like it's a really powerful defense right away from yourself, from your inner self, from a fear or whatever it is that's going on inside you. All right, and last thing in this last step, when you're going through the experiments, when you are trying on from step 2, all the different ways you could still get to the why that you found in step 1 is to return to that why. So if it's not feeling right, if you're feeling confused, if you're feeling lost, come back to step 1. Remember your why. What are you trying to accomplish here? Professionalism, a successful business, good relationships with family and friends, whatever it is. Come back to that why, and then check in with, am I fostering that right now? Am I working toward that right now? Or am I working against it or not as beneficial as it could be? I believe that is all. I have some notes here I want to double check before letting you guys go. A big recap, we have step 0, which is to admit that whatever's happening right now with boundary setting is not working. Step 1 is to get at the why. What are you trying to accomplish here? Maybe it's better health for yourself, intimate relationships, a successful business, whatever it is. And then you brainstorm all the different ways that you could get at the why rather than the boundary, the first detail that you were originally at. And then 3, try on an experiment. Try on one thing from step 2 that might work. Gather some data, test those limiting beliefs to see if they're actually true in a safe space, in a boundaried space, and then return to step 1, come back to that why, and continue this cycle until you find a boundary that feels really good for you. One question that came through I also wanted to address from the Q&A I put on Instagram yesterday was how to set boundaries with friends and family without the guilt. And something else, another layer that could be added to this 3-step process is that first step not only coming to your why, but coming to the mutual why. So Crucial Conversations is a book that outlines a great outline for how to get at, go about disagreements, especially among intimate relationships in our life. And one of the biggest center points of that framework is to get at the shared pool of meaning, I think is what the terms they use in the Crucial Conversations book. So the shared pool of meaning, or just think of the mutual why. What is the mutual thing that all of us right now are trying to get to? So the example I gave with messaging friends and family. Mutually, myself and my friends and family are trying to maintain an intimate connection, a good connection, a sustainable connection, fun relationships over time, right? That's the shared pool of meaning, the mutual why. So I'm trying to do that personally, but also, like I mentioned earlier, my why for that boundary for when to reply to friends and family messages was to stay focused in my business. But the shared pool of meaning is to maintain intimate connections. So come to that shared pool of meaning, find something that both you and your friend or family are agreeing on and actually both working toward, and use that to actually foster your decision and strengthen your decision. So for instance, my boundary of checking friends and family messages sometimes during my workday, but in a boundaried space, for instance, lunchtime or a 5-minute break. That way I'm fully present with my friends and family during that time, as opposed to being all over the place if I would just check my messages in the middle of the day whenever it pops up on my phone. So it is working toward that mutual that pool of mutual meaning, that shared why from step 1, not only my why, but the shared why as well. So that's one tip that I would provide for you in this framework to help with the guilt on setting boundaries with family and friends, is not only find your why in step 1, but also find the mutual why, the shared why. All right, a lot of this has to do with time management. A lot of this shows up in time management. Again, specifically, if you're working from being someone else's employee to being your own boss. And if this is something you want to work on, I have a free workshop coming up on November 5th, if you can believe it. November is right around the corner. November 5th, it's a Thursday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. The link is in my Instagram bio. It's also on SCORE St. Paul's webpage, free workshops. So this is virtual. You don't have to live in St. Paul, Minnesota. That's just where we're going through. I'm collaborating with SCORE, and it is free of charge. Like I mentioned, we talk a lot about not only these mindset and the framework of how to set boundaries with your time, but also a good framework for how to set boundaries with tasks and with goals that you have, especially if you are a business owner. So I highly encourage you to check that out. Grab your free seat, November 5th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Furthermore, if you like this style of this framework, step-by-step, bite-sized pieces, this is exactly what I do in the SN Experience, which is my group program. And November's topic is financial alignment. So if you want a step-by-step just like this, but with added accountability and support because we have weekly group coaching calls as well, so that you actually implement this step, not just learn about it, then I definitely invite you to go check out yesandbymaureen.com/experience. That's also in my Instagram bio, or head out to yesandbymaureen.com and click the Work With Me tab. This will give you the outline of the Yes and experience. Like I said, November is all about financial alignment, and upcoming for sure, we will be doing more time management. We did a schedule challenge in August, but that is a very common topic, especially with this boundary setting. And also, I feel like boundary setting specifically will be coming up pretty soon. Maybe December. Maybe December. All right. Let me know if you have any questions, whether you're watching the replay, whether you're joining live. Comment where you are showing up here. This is across multiple platforms. And again, link to the free time management workshop, and also check out the SN experience if you want more step-by-step, but also the accountability and implementation of these frameworks. Have a wonderful Tuesday. I will see you next week.